This is the 1893 Corliss steam engine here at the Muskegon Heritage Museum of Business and Industry. I'm Darren, and this is the Industrial Revolution. This Corliss steam engine was built in 1893 by, we'll have to come back to that. It was originally installed in, well, there's actually some question there too. What we can say with certainty is that before coming to the museum, it was originally installed at the Stewart Hartshorn Roller Shade Company in Muskegon, Michigan. It's a Corliss steam engine with a single double-acting cylinder generating a staggering 90 horsepower, or about the same as a modern subcompact car. Unlike the modern car, though, with the entire car weighing a ton or so, this engine actually weighs 18 tons, not counting the massive foundation required to hold it. The 10-foot, 3-meter flywheel alone weighs 6 tons. Today, this engine is running on about 3 psi of air pressure, and really it's just kind of casually coasting along at about 12 RPM. During its working life at Hartshorn, though, it was running way faster, up to around 100 RPM on about 100 psi of steam pressure. It would have been loud, and with all that steam, even venting the steam outside, it would have been hot too. But this wasn't Hartshorn's first steam engine in his factory. So where did it come from? 1893, when this engine was built, was also the year of one of the greatest World's Fairs of all times, the Columbian Exposition in Chicago. When my time machine shows up, the Columbian Exposition is one of the first 2 places I'm going. Attended by over 27 million people, exhibits included the pinnacle of steam engines, the peak of the electrical current wars, the first ever large-scale electric lighting, and the first Ferris wheel, and so many other exhibits that, even if you attended every day, open to close, opening day to closing day, it would have actually been mathematically impossible to see every single exhibit at the fair. It attracted the rich and famous, the everyday person, and, most important to us today, the world's industrialists. Stewart Hartshorn, living just a short ferry ride or train trip from the fair, would certainly have spent a lot of time there, especially in the machinery hall, where the biggest and newest technology was on exhibit. While it's pretty certain that Hartshorn would have gone to the fair and spent considerable time there, from here, we do have to go just a bit into the realm of theory. Electrification was a huge theme at the Columbian Exposition. With the prominent inventors and industrialists all at the fair, and all talking about electrification being the future, let's assume that Hartshorn decided he needed to electrify to bring his factory into the future too. Local stories say our engine was actually on exhibit at the World's Fair, but I don't think that's really true, and I'll explain why a little later. Instead, I think Hartshorn saw all these massive steam engines producing electricity, saw electric motors running everything, and he heard virtually every major industrialist saying electrification was the future. So he went home and ordered a new steam engine to electrify his factory.
Came to us from a local company that's been in business.
This wouldn't be his first, of course. Hartshorn's factory was built in 1885 to make roller blinds, including spring-loaded roller blinds, which they actually invented. They ran a pair of 400 horsepower steam engines to power the line drive system throughout the factory. As was standard at the time, they would have had those steam engines connected via heavy leather belts to an overhead line drive system, which would have powered all the machines. Now you can't actually run 2 independent steam engines to power one line drive system, and they didn't need to. I suspect that what happened was they started the factory with just a single engine, then, with business doing well, they expanded the factory, added a second engine, and added a second independent line drive system. Of course, unlike the one here in the Muskegon Heritage Museum of Business and Industry, those original engines would have been running much faster, and they would have powered a lot more machines. It also wouldn't have been a Corliss steam engine like this one, but a much less efficient one, which didn't operate as smoothly. In the factory, the new Corliss engine here would have been hooked up to a DC electric generator called a dynamo to produce DC power. This could have run electric lighting throughout the factory. Remember, Hartshorn had just been awed by all the electric lights at the World's Fair, and this would have let him show off. And it could also have run some newer pieces of equipment that ran on electricity rather than the line drive system. Unfortunately, the other steam engines, the dynamo, and the overhead line drive systems were all lost sometime before this engine came to the museum, so some of this is just educated guesses. When Hartshorn returned from the World's Fair, seeing that, without question, in the opinion of pretty much every major industrialist and every major business, that electricity was the future, I'm guessing he decided he wanted in. But did this engine really come from the Chicago World's Fair, as some claim? Anything on exhibit at the World's Fair was there with the biggest, boldest manufacturer plate on it that you could possibly fit. As a visitor, looking at any of the engines at the fair, you knew immediately who made it. Do you see a manufacturer plate? I looked. I couldn't even find mounting screws for one. And that brings us to another part of the mystery of this engine. Who exactly built it? Well, the main Corliss patent had expired by 1893, so that part of the design was public domain, but other patents used on this engine hadn't yet expired. This engine was built, then tucked away in a mid-sized factory in a small Michigan town, likely never to be seen by the public. The company building it could either pay a bunch of licensing fees or not. Then, as now, it was pretty common for companies to try to dodge those licensing fees, as we discussed in my video on another steam engine, which is linked in the description. Those engines were, and are, called pirate engines. As a pirate engine, there's no way a manufacturer would have displayed this engine at the World's Fair. That would have virtually guaranteed they'd be sued. As a bit of extra insurance, even with it not going on display, they also didn't even put a name on it, just to be safe. So who actually built it? There's some evidence it was made by Taylor and Price out of Wisconsin, with one expert on their engine saying it was, but another saying it definitely wasn't. If you know steam engines, let me know in the comments what you think. By 1920, municipal electricity had become available in Muskegon, and Hartshorn purchased a new AC motor to connect to the line drive system. Since power was still a bit unreliable, though, they kept this steam engine and DC electric system as a backup, using it as needed. In the museum, they found a paper tag tucked into the engine indicating the last date of service of August 2nd, 1942, so that's probably the last time it was ever run in production. Then it sat, and sat, and sat. Finally, in 1981, the company closed permanently and, as was often the case, abandoned the engine in place. In 1983, a new developer bought the building and, recognizing the value of this engine, donated it to the Muskegon Heritage Association who, while loving the engine, had nowhere to put it. Fortunately, the city had a spare building on their hands and donated the building to the Muskegon Heritage Association to house their new steam engine. After pouring these massive concrete footings and pedestals in the basement, which actually had a dirt floor when they first moved in, the Muskegon Heritage Association opened the Muskegon Heritage Museum of Business and Industry to show it off. While we're down here, let's take a look at how it's powered today.
Next door with a straight pipe. And nobody liked running it because it's so noisy. But on the plus side, you could run the steam engine.
This big red thing is the original air compressor to power the engine upstairs. It's big and noisy, and they don't use it anymore. Instead, they've installed this little regenerative air compressor that sits next to it, which is small and quiet and efficient. Let's go back upstairs and look at one other thing while we're here. Hey, I just want to take a second to thank my members both at patreon.com/Industrial Revolution and here at YouTube. If you join them, you get monthly updates and insider videos, and membership start at just a few bucks a month. Thanks a lot. Let's get back to the video. A while ago, I did a video on a larger Corliss steam engine at the Grand Rapids Public Museum, maybe an hour or so away from here. A lot of people expressed concern that the oil cups on that engine were all turned off and that they appeared to be running it dry, despite some visible oil on the engine. Fortunately, when I arrived at this museum today, the person who takes care of their engine was just oiling everything, and I was able to ask him about it. Because the engine isn't running on hot steam, it stays nice and cool. Because it's running so incredibly slowly and so cool, it just really doesn't burn through much oil. He told me they typically do their big lubrication cycle on Thursday. Well, I was there on Friday, but fortunately something had come up the day before, so he was doing it while I was there. So while we're here, let's take a look at that lubrication, since there's one or two new things here. First, you'll notice there's not much in the way of ball bearings. Without ball bearings, they instead use what are called plain bearings or journal bearings. These bearings have smooth surfaces made of a lead alloy called Babbitt metal. When kept oiled, they're quite durable, but they're also designed as wear surfaces. If they wear down to the point where they start causing problems, you just pour new metal in and then keep going. One other critical point that you have to oil is the cylinder, piston, and valve gear. Running at high speed and 100 psi of steam pressure, that's not an easy task, and an oil drip cup just isn't going to cut it. Elijah McCoy first invented a system for doing that, but here we see a slightly different model, a mechanical force-feed lubricator, or just a mechanical oil pump. This pump forces tiny bits of oil up through this thin pipe into the steam inlet. When it hits the high-pressure steam, it's blasted into a fine mist, where it's then run through the engine with the steam. On the way through, the oil coats and lubricates the valve gear, the cylinder, the piston, and then the other side of the valve gear, before finally exhausting that used oil with the steam. That oil could cause problems if you reuse the steam elsewhere, but that's for another video. Looking back on the outside of the engine here, they don't have as many oil cups here as they did in Grand Rapids, but they do have a different design. See that loop of felt hanging down under the oil cup? The oil dripped onto that felt, keeping it saturated. As things moved under it, either back and forth or round and round, a part called a wiper picks up a bit of that oil and is channeled down to where it's needed. Compare that wiper oiler system with this engine in Grand Rapids, where you have all the oil cups running back and forth at high speed. And remember, this engine's also running at just a fraction of its normal speed. By comparison, the wiper oiler system leaves the oil cup stationary and easy to adjust and refill while the engine's running. While we're in Grand Rapids, note how many more oilers there are on this engine. Everywhere there's an oiler, that's a spot you have to oil, either with an automatic oiler or by hand. Looking back at this engine in Muskegon, you see how it's done, with this collection of 6 different oil cans with different tips and containing different oils. These aren't interchangeable. You select the right oil can, depending on what you're oiling, and how you have to reach in to get safely, or at least fairly safely, around the moving components of the engine. You can see here, at low speed, it's not hard to hit all these points, but remember that I've had someone taking care of this engine all day. It's currently running about 12 RPM here in the museum, but in actual use, with Corliss valve gear, this engine could have been running as fast as 100 RPM, and the person taking care of it would have been reaching in and around it all day to keep it running. So this engine ran primarily up until the 1920s, although there is some evidence that it was used as a backup power supply for another couple decades after that, before finally shutting down permanently in the 40s. Fortunately, it found its way here to the museum, and today you can see it running and come in and learn about Corliss steam engines, about steam power, machine shops, and plenty more. And that's why this is the Industrial Revolution. Hey, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. If you could help out the channel, like, share, subscribe. Also, comment. I love reading the comments. I usually respond to them pretty quick. If you want to see more great steam engine videos, click on the playlist here, or the video up here that YouTube thinks you'll really enjoy next. Again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.